Oh boy. Welcome back to my channel, sports fans. Okay, let's get into this one right here. Could the 24 Olympic men's basketball team beat the 96 Dream Team? Wow. Wow. The media will not talk about this like this team never ever existed. Okay, but first, let's school you LeBron fans and this era fans on a little bit of history. From the beginning of basketball, at least until the 60s, the game was not played. Well, let's just say from the 60s all the way until the 2000s, right? The game was never played solely on athleticism. That is not how the game was played. It was executed based on X's and O's, fundamentals, and positional skills. That's how it was played. Okay, now if you were athletic, that was a plus. Like my job. Okay, my job, been doing it for over 20 years. And you don't have to be, it's a physical job. It's a hard job. And you don't have to be athletic to do it. But if you're athletic, it's a plus. It gives you an advantage. But what makes you good at the job is the way you execute the job and are able to do it right, at every, you know, position of the job. No matter, you know, if you're doing it, if you have to do it this way, if you have to do it that way, you have to do it right. But athleticism and being strong, it makes it easier. Okay, and that's why I've been so good at the job. Not only because I'm strong and athletic, it's because I know how to execute the job the right way. And I've seen guys who came to the job and they weren't great. They weren't really strong guys and they weren't like real athletic. But once they knew how to do the job and knew how to do the right things at the right time to get the job done, they were better than guys that came to the job who were just bigger and more athletic than them. Okay? You being bigger and more stronger and more athletic only comes to your advantage when you know how to do the job right and everything is second nature to you. So what I'm trying to say is just because you're a really athletic sports player, or in this case a basketball player, doesn't give you the advantage. If you're not down to do everything as far as fundamentals, execution, and X's and O's, you're not going to be better than somebody who is more athletic than you. Take Larry Bird. Look how good he was over a lot of these guys in the 80s because he knew the fundamentals of the game. He knew how to execute. Now, we can even say that in this era when we look at Luka and we look at Joker. But look, this is where I'm going to start at. And I said this when we first started, that the game was never only about athleticism. It was only a plus. When Michael Jordan was in North Carolina, he was crazy athletic, but Dean Smith would not let him just use his pure athleticism to play. And it was about team basketball. It was about X's and O's, fundamentals, and executing a game. And when he got to the pros, guess what? He got to showcase more of his athleticism because he played with a lot of guys who didn't know how to execute the game and have great fundamentals like other teams in the league. Once you put those two things together and you're able to execute with the fundamentals and X's and O's, that's when you become a great team. And we saw that when the 84 Olympic team just beat the hell out of NBA players before they went to the Olympics, because all those guys, yes, most of them were great athletes, but they knew how to execute at the highest level because they were going to the NBA the next season. Most of them were. So when we fast forward this thing and we go up to about the LeBron James draft in 2003, the big thing was who? It was LeBron James. And we would see these highlights of this guy, and he was a great passer, and he was a great finisher, dunker, did a lot of layups, but we didn't really see nothing about the guy having fundamental skills at 6'9", he won 250 then, about what, 220, 230 back then? At that size, we didn't see him having those fundamental skills in the paint. He didn't have great footwork in the paint. He wasn't a good shooter. We won't even say a great shooter, but he wasn't even a good shooter. So for him to go number one in the draft, it was more about potential. Versus we saw a guy like Carmelo Anthony, right? We seen his real potential because he won a college championship against college players. And he won the MVP too. And we always talk about, what do we always talk about? In the NBA, you're playing against the best of college players. In college, you're playing against the best of high school players. In high school, you're playing against the best of, I don't know. Okay, dude's trying out for the team, I guess. Right? So that kind of set a standard right there for the NBA when you have a guy like LeBron. Not saying he wasn't a great talent coming into the NBA, but a guy like that being drafted number one in the 2003 draft over Carmelo Anthony that basically had already proved something in college. A guy like Dwayne Wade, who had a great tournament run, had already proved something against the best of high school players, right, in college. And dudes like Chris Bosh, who had already proved something against college players, and you had LeBron, who hadn't proved nothing except for playing against AAU guys and dunking on academy school guys. So he really wasn't tested. So that was your new NBA right there. So as we head into the 2003 Olympics, we know what LeBron shot for the season. He was a minus 144 for the season. Shot like 41% from the field. 73% from the line. Was a brick artist from three. And yeah, he gave you 20 points, but that was on 40% shooting. And he missed the playoffs. That season, well, the offseason, they go to the Olympics. And a lot of guys from that draft, in LeBron's draft, was on the Olympic team. Right? A lot of guys that don't play defense. I'm not going to say Dwayne Wade. I think Dwayne Wade was ahead of his time. But Carmelo Anthony, he was kind of suspect. I'm sure Duncan was kind of tired after winning that championship. You just had I think Starberry was on that team. Chris Bosh was still young. Another player. You guys are probably going to beat me up for this, and that's fine. But you got a guy like Allen Iverson in his infamous, most famous line, practice. This did not set a good standard for this era. Because even though he said his favorite player was Michael Jordan was all about practice and getting better and executing and down with the fundamentals to be the greatest of all time. So even though Allen Iverson was great, practice is about you and your team. Okay? Even though Michael Jordan was great, it was about him and his team. And to me, that did not set a good standard going forward when we hear these type of things. And Allen Iverson was on that team. So we know what happened on that team. They got the bronze medal against who? Well, let's just say the Argentinian plumbers. I don't remember no athletic people on that team beating that Olympic team. We know LeBron James would miss the next season playoffs, even with an all-star teammate, right? So basically, they had to draw a line in the NBA. And it wasn't really because, well, we can say, yes, international players were catching up. But why were they catching up? Because these guys were digressing. These guys weren't the defensive stalwarts that the guys in the past were. They really didn't believe in playing defense. So what did the NBA do? They changed the defensive rules. Suddenly, LeBron, the next season, makes the playoffs. And he puts up incredible numbers. And if I might add, no knock on Kobe, but he started putting up insane numbers too. Not saying he wasn't going to, but he started putting up these insane numbers too. And it was just happening all over the league. where you couldn't hand check no more on a regular basis. You couldn't put elbows in the back of the post on a regular basis. You were no longer allowed to do this, and I hear a lot of nonsense where people say, "Oh man, they outlawed that in '95 or '96." No, no, they put it in place to where it would be called, but dudes were still hand checking and put elbows in the post in the back. Go look at Jordan's Washington years; they were still hand checking them. Look at the last shot, right? When Michael Jordan went all the way to the left, right? And right before he took off to take that last shot, what happens? Russell hand checks him. And Michael kind of like, takes his hand off of him or something like that. And then he goes, takes the last shot and wins the game. But what I'm trying to explain was they didn't really call these type of calls, these type of fouls, unless you were actually now going up for the bucket. So if a dude, while you were shooting, try to hand check you or push you in the back or do something like that while you were dropping, now they were going to call it. But no, it wasn't until '05 to where they was going to call it at least 70% of the time. Now, am I saying it didn't happen? Yes, they were still doing it, but it was more heavily officiated. And to me, this is what brought these international players in the game. When they found out that the new crop of NBA players, like the LeBron era guys, were not disciplined in fundamentals, execution, and they don't play the same defense. And now that the NBA basically outlawed defense, these international players were allowed to start pouring into the game and become great players. Were there international players in the '90s? Yes. Great international players in the '90s, but they weren't taking over. I don't think they were the superstars. As far as non-athletic players, they just weren't. So to me, when they talk about the world caught up to them in '04, in '07, until today, that's the responsibility of the NBA because they basically took defense, and it's got worse in the 2010s and 2000s to make these players lazy. And that's why these dudes, international plumbers, have caught up to these guys because the new crop of NBA players are lazy. And the NBA has made them lazy, right? So in the '04 Olympics, how did they get beat? They got beat by international plumbers because, one, those guys on the U.S. team, they didn't really play defense like that. A lot of them just wanted to be shooters. A lot of them wanted to be athletic, but they really didn't want to play defense. So when you get to international players who are better shooters and no defense is played on them and they execute the game better than these new crop of players, that's when you lose. You saw today when the United States played Serbia, right? Serbia jumped all over them. They were executing. They were down with the fundamentals. And the only reason why Serbia ended up getting blown out because they're not athletic. When you have more guys on another team who are more athletic and they possess more fundamental skills overall than you're not going to win that. But the 2004 Olympic team, they didn't possess those fundamental skills as today's team. And we look at the '07 FIBA team, they didn't either. The NBA continued to play in the league of no defense. So when you go play internationally, guess what happens? You're not used to playing defense. And guess what else? You're not used to defense being played on you, right? So it takes away your overall game. When you're on offense, you're used to people like lagging off. That's what you're used to. You're not used to getting trapped, full court presses. You're not used to a dude up on you the whole time you're shooting, unless maybe it's the playoffs. See, the NBA players are used to making each other look good so they can get bigger contracts. They're not used to competing on a high level because they know if they compete on a high level, they're going to have to work harder. If they lag off and let each other just score all these points, they look good to get better endorsements, to get bigger contracts. That's what it is. And they don't care what the fans see because the fans see this. The fans see, dudes ain't even playing no defense. These dudes ain't even playing, they're not great offensive players at every level. The three, the mid-range, the post, the pick and roll, free throw. They see this. But what happens? The media is right there. The media says, oh, no, these are the greatest players of all time. The 90s guys couldn't shoot the three. These guys are just faster. So you got people telling you stuff that ain't true. But what you see is true with your own eyes. They don't want you to believe it. The media doesn't want you to believe it. So you get tricked. So when these guys are getting these big contracts, which everybody makes money, right? The sports team, they can raise tickets, popcorn, hot dogs, liquor, everything to outrageous rates. And you say, oh man, these guys are worth it. Because the media is telling me that, even though you don't see it with your eyes. You don't see it. These guys have been playing in a game that's 3/4 easier than what it was in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. That's the league they play in. They don't have to use all this energy to play defense and execute and have positional skills to have fundamentals at every position. They have taken an international game to just sit around the 3-point line. That ain't how we play. And spread out the court so they don't have to play any defense. That's how international players played because they never played no defense. So now international players can come over here and play this same game that the Americans play because the NBA pretty much has invited international players to come and play an easier game. And if you watch some of these FIBA games, some of these Olympic games, yes, the USA will ultimately win because they're more stacked. The team, the league, the world ain't caught up with them. You got 8 superstars on one team. These international teams have one superstar and maybe one role player from the NBA, or only have one superstar on one team, or maybe only have one role player. So that's not catching up to you. Just because you have a whole bunch of NBA players playing in international games, put their names out there. If they're not all-stars, it don't mean nothing. If they play one season in the NBA, it don't mean nothing. They're trying to tell you some bull crap. The reason why these guys, these international players who are on other teams, now who are playing in Olympics, can make an NBA roster because the league is weak. But still, even though the league's weak, this is what we still got to have to beat them because we don't possess the fundamental skills. We don't execute. We don't play no defense. So, of course, we got to have 8 superstars just to beat them by like 10 and 20 points instead of playing our superstars playing hard-nosed defense all season in the NBA, executing with fundamentals and having positional skills and blowing these guys out. That's just natural. As life progresses, that things are going to get better. But there's no excuse that we still shouldn't be blowing these guys out by 50 and 40 points. Because they claim that this era of guys in the NBA are just better. So you should still be blowing them out by 40 and 50 points. There's no excuse. Again, the reason why we have to lie about these players being better because we don't possess the fundamental skills of the past to be blowing these guys out. So let's look at this. You have Akeem Olajuwon, Shaq, I think Penny Hardaway, Karl Malone, Scottie Pippen, Charles Barkley, David Robinson, John Stockton, Gary Payton, Reggie Miller, Grant Hill, Penny Hardaway, who is this? Vin Baker. Am I to believe that these guys are gonna lose to the likes of let's just go off script? Devin Booker, Jason Tatum? And I know all these guys aren't still on this team right here. I put up the wrong graph. This was the original team. Of course, Kyrie ain't on here, my fault. But we all know the guys that's on this team. The Bams, the LeBrons, the Kev. No way that 96 Dream Team loses. They will be crushing these guys. Just off of defense alone. That's what you guys don't understand. Just off of defense alone, these guys will get crushed, the 24 team. They will get crushed. Defense wins championships. These guys aren't going to be able to get Keem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley, David Robinson, John Stockton will be running amok up and down the court on you guys. That's some of the great defenders, Scottie Pippen, David Robinson, and Shaq's even on there. Who's that? Reggie Miller. See, you guys, what you guys do is, oh man, they can't shoot the three. Go ahead and shoot the three. How you gonna shoot the three when the dude's all in your grill? What you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to keep moving the ball around, because what I'm seeing is most of these guys are not able to hit these threes unless they're wide open. Okay, these guys aren't gonna collapse and help another dude. Will help their teammate. All these guys can handle their guy. And you see that in the NBA today. A guy drives, and then another guy, defender, comes off his three-point guy to help the guy that's driving, and it leaves a three-point guy open. And it just goes on and on and on. That's not the 90s. They will be able to handle their own. You're not going to be able to get no three. Am I going to say this is going to be a blowout? No, I don't think it'll be a blowout. But the type of defense is going to get put on you guys. And then on the flip side, you guys ain't used to playing defense. Shaq would score like 30 in the game. Olajuwon would score. We're talking about, when you guys talk about comparing eras, when you take defense off of the 90s guys, you got to remember what they scored is going to go up. So it depends on what guy it is. Their scoring can go up 5 to 15 points a game. So you got to remember, what do you want to do? Do you want to play in the defensive era against these guys? You ain't used to playing defense, and you ain't getting used to defense getting put on you. Or do you want to play with no defense to where these guys are going to average 5 to 15 more points on their average? So what I'm trying to say is the international players didn't get no better. This era, starting with the LeBron era, got weaker. It got softer. They don't execute fundamentals. They don't have no positional skills. They said, let's just go play basketball and play off of athleticism, because now we can do that because they got away with defensive rules. So let's just play off of athleticism. LeBron never developed his game. Let's just bull charge to the lane and play off of athleticism. That would be a joke in the 90s. I've never seen anybody just bull charge the lane over and over and over, because they will put you on the line, or they will step in front of you and take the charge. That's what I'm saying. I see this over and over again. This guy has one skill: charge the lane, stand in front of him, take the charge. Take the charge. That's all it is. He has no other skills. Put him on the line. He's a liability at shooting free throws. He has no other skills to beat you on. And that's why he wanted to be the point guard in these games, because he can't play off the ball. He can't shoot the mid-range. He can't shoot the three. So he wants to control the ball. And in the mix, he'll get layups and he'll get dunks. So we're talking about the dream team on 92. They're not beating this 96 dream team that crushed their opponents by like 40 points. And don't tell me, oh, they didn't play all these NBA players internationally. Well, you guys are the ones that let these international plumbers come into the league, because they couldn't come into the league in the 90s like that. They couldn't. Most of these guys that you say, oh, they're playing international, and these international teams and they're NBA players, they wouldn't make the roster in the 90s. That's your problem. That's your problem. And you still have 8 to 9 superstars against these guys. This is a cop-out, man. We should be saying how many points we're going to blow these teams out by. But instead, we're making excuses because as they got better, we didn't get no better. And they really didn't get no better. They just got a superstar and a role player on their team, or one superstar or one role player. Tell me what you think.